little bit about the collaboration between Backstrap and C Marketplace. This Saturday Salon is just one part of it. What we are trying to do is that give a platform for all the company founders who have something to say and who need an audience, the right kind of audience, right? So this is what we do, and this Saturday Salon is one part where it used to be more of a free-flowing interaction, and which it still is, but then we have started giving around 15 to 20 minutes time, talk about themselves, their journey, about the business that they do also, and we lift that particular portion and leave it, put it in the whole Hackstrap YouTube channel. So so I give time to you now, Shiva. Make your introduction, take time, 15-20 minutes, whatever you feel free. Talk about yourself, about your journey, about your business, and also what you are looking for. And post that, we'll open the session for the other people to ask questions of you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aso. Hi, everybody. This is Shivaram Krishnan, PGP 31. So passed out in 1996. Stayed in WH for those of you who are interested in which hostel I stayed. But that time there was the second hostel around WH was not there, and the new teaching block was actually a hostel. So very different times at that time. There was OH, WH, and NH, and NTB was the newly opened hostel. The married hostel was just getting opened at that time. So I primarily did finance, operations, and systems in my stint in IMC. A lot of operations because I came from a mechanical engineering background. And I worked in Infosys for a year before I came into IMC. So as soon as I graduated, placement, the madness that we called a placement week at that time, I got into this company called Coopers and Lybrand, which was a consulting company which was in the same league as Accenture or A.T. Kearney at that time. Coopers and Lybrand and Pricewaterhouse then merged, became PricewaterhouseCoopers, which still continues now. So the font that you see when PricewaterhouseCoopers expands their name is the Coopers and Lybrand font. And then PwC, the management consulting division, got acquired by IBM in 2002. So I changed 3 jobs in 5 years, 6 years without having to put in a resignation. Right, so I had 3 different cards, logos, whatever. And then I hung around in IBM for another 12 years. So in all 18 years, I was in the same firm. So before I became completely unemployable, I think I thought I should do something else, and I left IBM in 2014. By which time it was a very different firm. I was actually the partner executive director for business analytics in IBM, though I started my career primarily in supply chain, SAP, APO implementations, I2 implementations, supply chain consulting, that kind of stuff. I specialized quite a lot in metals, natural resources. So I used to visit all the places that you never could locate on a map. Jharsuguda is one of them. Lanjigad, Korba, Bokaro, Bhilai, Jamshedpur was a very favorite haunt. In the kind of towns that I visited, Jamshedpur used to sound or look like a metro. So I have a very interesting set of war stories, which, once the COVID infection pandemic dies down a bit, maybe we can get together and I can tell you. But yeah, quite a lot of war stories that I have collected over a period of time. So yeah, after 2014, I left. I joined a small boutique consulting, supply chain consulting firm, which was there for 2 years. Then a group of my colleagues in Coopers and IBM, they started this firm, which was a software firm which had a very interesting premise, which I'll talk about in a bit. And so thanks for bringing up the behavioral angle, because that's the thing that I'm going to talk about a bit in my conversation today. So yeah, it was a very interesting concept, and I'll just explain what it is. And I have been with them now for about 5 years, since 2016. I will be touching 5 years in another 1 or 2 months from now. So that's a bit of a background. What I am part of now is called WorkSogo Solutions, and we are actually engaged in something that's pretty old as a concept: productivity improvement. Right. So we've all, management consultants, IT consultants, process consultants, we all have a similar objective, that how can we improve productivity of the employees at the workplace. So we do a whole bunch of things. Starting when I got out of campus, BPR was a big thing, business process reengineering, and then now digital transformation. There was in the middle of it all the whole e-business wave that took over just after the Y2K problem got solved. So a whole bunch of transformations and technology initiatives and process initiatives we've all done. What we have found out as part of our experience and our own research into getting started with this firm is there is always what we define as the last mile problem, right? So the last mile problem is basically you can spend billions of dollars, crores of rupees, um, changing processes, implementing technology. So somebody sitting in Bangalore or Gurgaon or Pune or Chennai can service the entire world using a standard process and a standard set of technologies. But still, at the end of the day, if you look at what kind of productivity you got from your team, you will find that you are 30-40% short. Okay, so inexplicable. Yeah, you try to do whatever technology implementations you want. At the end of the day, there will be that gap, and that gap just doesn't go away. So you build over capacity, you over invest in training, you over invest in recruitment. So you do a whole bunch of things simply because that's a capacity that you can never get. And we hit upon this very simple but startling insight that this is on account of behavior. Okay, and I'll give you a simple everyday example for this. So you can go to anybody in the world and ask them, do you want to be more fit? Do you want to be more wealthy? The answer will be yes. I mean, you can't imagine a guy saying, no, I don't want to be fit, or I don't want to make more money. There are a few. I'm not saying no, but in general, you would like to be well. Your well-being is of concern, right? Importance to you. But if you give a person a window of time, say a year or 2 years, and ask that person at the end of that period whether he or she is feeling as fit as they wanted to at the end of that period, the answer will be maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you had lots of parties, maybe you had a lot of junk food, maybe you spent all the money in buying gadgets that you didn't really need. It could be any number of reasons. So there are a lot of these operational, if I may call it, day-to-day constraints that come in the way of actually you realizing your long-term goal of being fitter. So, and we've all gone through New Year resolutions where we go join a gym, pay the entire year's fees, and then forget about it, right? And then we write it off by the end of the third month. It's dead investment. You say, "Kaun jayega, kaun musibat," and leave it, and it's dead. So, by a similar token, you can ask somebody at work, do they want to do better at their work? The answer would be yes. You can't find a guy that goes to office and say, no, I want to do badly. They will say, I want to do well. So there is intent. The long term intent is always to do better, to shine in the office, to do the best you can, and so on. But there is always a normal curve, right? There are always people that do exceptionally well, there are people that don't do so well, and a lot of people in between, right? So the question is, why is that so? So the answer, just like the health or the wealth example, is your day-to-day habits come in the way. So what you do if your health is failing, you go to a coach, or you join a group, running group or a gym group, and you go along with them. So there is a little bit of social pressure you bring on yourself. So you stay honest to what is your goal, and that somehow, in a lot of cases, moves you towards your objective. Similarly, for wealth, you get a financial advisor, you take his or her advice, and you try and see if you can save up before you start spending money. So, in a similar way, what we said is, can we do this as a workplace coach? So, you have a set of KPIs. Typically, those of you who have had experience in sales will know that there are 8 or 10 KPIs you have to achieve every month, every quarter for meeting your sales quota numbers. And those 8 or 10 KPIs have a certain cadence. So, you sell, you identify pipeline, you sell, you collect the money, and then you repeat the whole cycle all over again. It could be a monthly cycle, it could be a quarterly cycle. So as you go through this cadence day after day, and field sales teams or BPO teams, back office teams follow more or less a similar kind of cadence. As you go through the cycle, you will find that your habits are not adding up in meaningful ways. So you start a little late, you don't collect often, you don't meet enough of your customers, cold call customers or just build the pipeline. So those of you who are in sales will understand what I'm talking about. This will resonate, right? There are one or two things that you need to do every day, and those things are not done. So we thought that if you put a coach in place, that will help you get that thing done, okay, the priority thing done for that day. Then over a period of time, you will start building good habits. So the secret sauce of getting that 30-40% missing productivity is the human being at the end of it all, right? And the behavior that human being brings to office. Is he or she consistent? Is he or she disciplined about what they do in the workplace? How much of guidance is there required for them to do their day-to-day job? And then, of course, the entire hierarchy is kind of educated on what is going on at the frontline sales or the frontline operations team. By doing this, by fixing the small everyday things, we have achieved anywhere between 15 to 25% improvements in productivity, 8 to 9% improvement in outcomes like revenues and sales and so on and so forth. So recently, I was making a presentation last week to the senior management at Titan, and I was able to show some 6.5% gain in their over the last 6 months in terms of their top line numbers, the revenue sales numbers, right? I mean, of course, the year has been a pretty much a washout. Titan has been doing relatively okay. So the comparison this year is a bit dodgy. So we will need to continue to look at the numbers and so on and so forth. But these are the kind of improvements that come. So if I say that you have the same 100-150 people who are your sales officers, and you get 6% more sales from them because I'm changing some small thing like behavior, how they approach their work, and I'll give you a couple of examples in the consumer goods sector in a minute. And you get this remarkable gain in productivity and number of work days they put. And this is where this example it comes from fast moving consumer goods companies like Marico, Godrej Consumer, um, Calvin Care, etc. So they have a measure called um, right execution day or productive work day. Various names are called. So these are days where your salesperson shows up in the market at 10 or 10:30 in the morning, continues to work till 5:30. So there is some attendance recording. They meet a few dealers. Those dealers, say 10 or 15 dealers in the day. They have to raise so many sales orders in the day, sell so many products in the day. So there are some 4 or 5 metrics that when they all come together and they all cross the threshold that is set up, you have a right execution day or a productive work day. And in a lot of these FMCG companies, we found, and an average month is 25-26 work days. The number of right execution days in an average work month of 25-26 days was 12 or 13, right? So 50% of your month was not productive in the measure that the company themselves put in place, right? So they were not productive because somebody didn't meet dealers, somebody didn't bill, somebody didn't sell all the products, and so on and so forth. But 12 to 13. When we went and started implementing our product, it's a SaaS-based product, and I'll come to the technology piece in a bit. When we started putting in the product and when these coaching tips, inputs, what we call nudges, they started going out to the team went from 12, 13 work days in the productive work days in the month to about 20 to 21 productive work days in the month. That's a straight 8-day increase on the same people, right? No change in the people. And we do a lot of this A/B testing. So all the stuff that you learned in econometrics about correlation and all the stuff that you may have learned and forgotten, things like ANOVA and ARIMA and all of that we use, right? So it's a geek's paradise. I'm quite delighted to be creating all of these things and selling this to clients, and actually looking back and thinking, oh, that time was not wasted, right? All the stuff that I spent in my quantitative courses, pulling my hair out, wasn't actually wasted. And it's fantastic to see that. They always say, in at least in fitness coach manuals, is a standard thing, right? Intensity doesn't matter, but consistency does, right? So if you're consistent day after day after day, and if you do a small bit of improvement on your work thing every day, then over a period of time, you will, suddenly be more improved, and you will surprise yourself when you look back and say, "Oh shit, I did that." right? It's that a lot of you would have seen that graphic also, right? 1.01 raised to 365 versus 0.99 raised to, yeah, exactly. Manish Singhal just said that. Exactly, right? So this is it, right? So, and this is a principle that we work with, and it creates a huge impact, and clients are absolutely delighted because what we do is we deploy a SaaS product. So you pay per user per license per month, and it's an India. It's we are based out of Bangalore, so it's an India pricing. It's not it'll not cost you an arm and a leg. Of course, we would like to have world domination like Facebook, like Satish is working in, was it Satish? I think so, yeah. He's working in Facebook. So we'd like to dominate the world and control the behavior of all the people that are at workplace, but we are a long way from there. But we are employing all these methods of influencing behavior. We base our conceptual base is on behavioral economics, which you might have heard recently. 2017, Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize for his work on the nudge. We have a lot of everyday examples in India as well on the nudge. Like, for example, the Prime Minister's initiative on giving up subsidized LPG is an example of a nudge. So they are appealing to your social self in a certain way. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is another example of a nudge, open defecation free, to get you aligned with building toilets and supplying water to those toilets and all of those things. So a whole bunch of things that are going on in public policy. UK, for example, they have nudges based on taxes. They actually have a behavioral science unit. And nudge as a concept is as old as advertising, right? So everything that we buy because of an ad is the outcome of a nudge. They just found the right trick to get you into their shop, right? So we are trying to do the same thing. It's the concepts are all old, but we are trying to do it in a new and completely unexplored area in the workplace. And consistently improving employee behavior actually results in fairly dramatic and fairly surprising outcomes. And we have established this in multiple kind of industries. So we have banking customers like ICICI, HDFC. We have NBFC customers like Tata Motors Finance, TVS Credit. We have manufacturing customers like L&T, Titan. We have pharmaceutical clients, both Indian as well as international clients. We have lots and lots of BPO employees that are on our platform. So about 100,000 users and counting. We have ambitions to enter the US this year. Hopefully, the pandemic will allow us some respite. So once we get into the US, we hope to expand our footprint there. We are, like I said, 6-year-old company. I've been there pretty much from about a year after the firm has started. And I have been fortunate enough to be part of building the product, creating the technology that we deploy. These days, though, I'm more on the business development side. So as part of the co-founding team, it was felt that my skills and talents and consulting network can be better utilized in the market. So I'm after having built the product to a certain level, for the last 1 year and a few months, I've been doing more business development related work. So that's us. That's me. Having, like I said, a lot of fun building this out and seeing how it goes.
So, if you have any specific ask concerning your company and whatever you believe that maybe this limited is there, but if you want to ask anything, please do ask, and then we'll leave it open for the general discussion.
So the most obvious, given my role that I'm doing right now, is network effects. We do have a method where, for about 2 to 3 months, the results that we show typically are within a period of about 3 to 4 months, sometimes even less than that. So you deploy our product, within 3 to 4 months, you start seeing a jump in productivity or a jump in outcomes. More often than not, clients want to continue with us. So what we try to do is to structure contracts so that you pay a small upfront fee of for a few months, and then if you are happy with the outcomes, then you continue for the remaining part of the year. So anybody that wants to try us out, we would be more than happy. I'm sure the kind of experience and capabilities that I've heard around in today's call, even including young, enthusiastic, energetic people. I'm slowly going over the hill, so sorry about sounding geriatric, uh, but yeah, any contacts, anybody that you think is interested, and it's a very elegant way of addressing behavior and productivity in the same breath. So uh, if there is anybody that you believe is looking for productivity solutions in their organization, that would be my first task. We are always on the lookout for talent, so if anybody has engineering skills, IT engineering skills, cloud engineering skills, Python skills, this is a great place to come and build your skills a bit more, because we do believe that we have a lot of cutting edge stuff that we are doing. Um, but we do it with old concepts, right? So there's a little bit like the hotel business. They'll never get out of fashion. So you go to any organization, say, do you want more productivity? They'll say yes. You can't say see an organization that say, yeah, come and let's do some time pass. People want to have a goal. They want to have an objective. So if anybody wants to give us a shot as an employer, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy. US connections are more than welcome, right? So the one thing that we are actively seeking is partners who can help us um, take us to the US, connections that we can utilize um, and deliver work in the US for clients in the US. That would be my third ask or request, not ask. Yeah, that's about it.
Shiva, one question, if I can ask.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
uh, uh, regarding the pricing of the product, it
Yeah,
is per user, license per user per month,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So, is it relevant for a uh, bigger firms, or is it relevant for a, when I say bigger or smaller, I mean, is it relevant for a 10-member team also, or is it more for 100 or thousands of field force
Yeah,
that a typical large company has?
very good question. Yeah. So normally, what we do, how do you know that and now that we have all gone through a 1.5 years worth pandemic and statistics related to that, I can freely say these things. So we do a lot of A/B testing, right? So this is like giving somebody a medicine and somebody else a placebo, right? And figuring out whether they get infected or not, so if you send a nudge to a group of people who look similar, um, you know, in profile, and they handle similar looking territories and all that. So if you have two teams, then it's easy for you to establish a baseline and a comparison basis. So I think my answer comes from there, that you should have at least a statistical sample. So which means that you should have at least 25 people per team. So at least 50 people would make a good this thing. Otherwise, if you have only 10 people, then I'll do 5 and 5. They'll say, oh, some random effects got into the way, and I'm really not sure whether you did any. So yeah, without a statistical sample, it's harder to identify whether there is any improvement or not, right? So we should have at least 25 these days, though, because of infrastructure cost and other costs. We would prefer to have people that have at least 100 people in their sales team. um, but yeah, 50 is the absolute bare minimum. Prefer to have 100 or more. ICICI, for example, we have 21,000 users. EXL, which is a BPO, I think we have 4-5,000 users. Tata Motors Finance, we have about 7 or 8,000 users. So these are all very large implementations. We also have 150, 200 users in some of the other clients that we work with. So we have the spectrum. I'll just give you one more example, and again, for the people that have interest in organizational behavior, this will be very interesting insight. So we were doing this project for ICICI, and we were doing this for two of their divisions. One of them was rural and inclusive banking. It was called RIBG for short, and the other was personal loans, so PL for short. and the rural and inclusive banking people. So when we were looking at the nudges that we were sending out to the population of people in rural and inclusive banking, we found that the nudges that we sent and the nudges that seemed to be more effective were self-referencing. So are you doing better than yourself in the previous period, in the previous month, quarter, whatever? That was the set of nudges that seemed to work for the people in rural inclusive banking. Whereas for the personal loans, it was more like, am I doing better than X or Y or Z in my office, right? So, am I comparing myself to my peers? And is that helping me improve my performance? That seemed to be the mechanism. So, we didn't understand, we didn't have any business context. So, we went to the executive director who called us for a presentation and we said, this is what the data says, but we don't know why this is so. So he brought a social angle to this, which was very insightful, saying that, look, this makes a lot of sense to us because the rural inclusive banking employees that we have typically come from towns where there aren't any colleges, and a lot of these people are first members of their family to enter a large company like ICICI. So they are only interested in making sure that they are doing well. They are constantly looking at improving their own whatever situation in life. So they are driven by, are they getting better or not? Whereas the personal loans team is more from the smaller towns. They are typically a small middle class family that's staying there, and they want to make sure that they have a scooter that looks better than the neighbor. I mean, typical. I'm generalizing, but you get the picture, right? So the motivational levers for both of these teams are completely different. And this now is input for me to actually change how my incentive scheme is structured, right? So for the RIBG division, I'm going to have a simple straight line. So you achieve 70%, you get 70% incentive. You achieve 80, I'll give you 80, and so on and so forth. So it's a straight line, and that makes sense. Whereas for personal loans, I'll have a bit of competition. So I'll have a step function where if you achieve above a threshold, if you achieve more than, if you're in the 90 percentile of your cohort, only then you get an incentive. Things like this, right? So it offers you interesting possibilities for incentive management. We can work in complementarity with incentive management programs. We can work in complementarity with L&D programs, learning and development programs. We can even work complementarily to AI programs like recommender engines and those kind of things which exist in abundance today. Saying if there is a recommended way to kind of build your market, we can nudge you towards that. We can say that, you give us a recommendation, we will take care of the employee behavior towards that recommendation. That makes a huge amount of sense too. So it's a combination of things. I mean, like I said, human behavior is something very fundamental, and we have tried to see whether we can tap into that. So yeah, that's
So Shiva, question for you. You used it in a sales context mainly.
also back office, Jyoti. So BPO, for example, EXL has a lot of insurance clients based out of the US. So things like claims processing and claims filing, verification. So all of these things where the agents are working. So any task that has a repetitive nature, like that you have to do multiple times in the day, in the week, in the month, that has a fixed cadence. I mean, we would prefer, I mean, if you're selling like multi-million-dollar IT equipment, then that's a relationship based selling. But if you're selling laptops or you're selling desktops or you're selling soap or shampoo, any of those things which have a repetitive kind of action, this fits really well. So relatively higher velocity works. Automotive. So we've even done it for Tata Motors and TVS Motors to try and see whether we can impact their sales pipeline.
So any other questions and all?
Yeah, I actually had a question comparing between the FMCG in India versus some of the inside sales experience that I have seen selling to other geographies, right? And what I've observed is that in India, a typical salesperson, at least about 6 years back, was getting paid somewhere around 25 to 30K per month, and the usual target that they were carrying was somewhere in the range of 2.5 lakhs per month. So which is a 10 times sort of an 10 ratio. Whereas now I am seeing a lot of Indians selling to the US, where because of the exchange rates coming into play, the value of deals that they end up selling is very different. and that actually has an impact in terms of what is the size of the sales force that I need to be able to deliver a 10 million or a 15 million incremental ARR. In that situation, I will not necessarily need the same size of the sales force as wherein Voxugo might come in handy, but I still want to improve the efficiency or productivity of my sales team.
Absolutely.
So how do we
Absolutely.
go about it in that situation?
So inside sales, we have, I mean, I think for EXL, for one of their clients, we have actually deployed this as an inside sales, but it is sales in the sales of insurance products in the US, right? So they have like a 40-member team, right? So because EXL has a much larger footprint for us across multiple of their instances, we took the call that we will go ahead and support them for this initiative as well. So yes, the answer to you is you're right. Inside sales does tend to have smaller team sizes, but if we find the right use case for it, then we can definitely try and see if we can deploy in that kind of a scenario. So yeah, that works for inside. We have seen, like, we also deployed, I think, for one of our clients, they had Airbnb customer complaint management process on our platform, right? How do you they have a process of refunding money if the customer is not happy. So they had some very complex measurements on how the agents will handle customer satisfaction as a parameter, and we ended up delivering some, again, good results on that as well. So but yes, I mean, there are some gaps. Like a human being, I mean, any of us would not like to be constantly monitored. So there are some red lines we cannot cross. I can't say, and there are other factors, right? So when we say behavior, we define this very narrow band called workplace behavior, which is what are the actions you take at work. But in these times, if you find somebody at home is not well and you have a low productivity day in office, I can't be insensitively sending you messages saying buck up, do well, this, that, and the other. Then you will react, right? I mean, people don't take very kindly to these things. So yeah, so we are learning that there is the whole business of AI ethics and the boundaries of human privacy, which we need to respect. I think we are discovering that as we go along. But thankfully, because these are all kind of B2B deployments, and we have very, very little, like literally two data fields, which may be considered employee private information, like employee name and maybe an employee ID of any sort, whether it's a mail ID or a mobile number or an employee ID. So these are the only two data elements that we have in our entire system, which are personal identifiable information. So we have, at least the impact of privacy and other kinds of issues are very low. And we sell to the company, we don't sell to the individual. So, and we don't use the data for any kind of other purposes. So and we have an ISO certification and all that. So we have a lot of protection around what we do with the data. It's very specific to that particular employee's performance context, but still there are some red lines which we do not want to cross.
Right. And I also have a slight bit of a follow up on that, wherein some of these teams that we end up having are actually highly hyper focused on specific use cases or specific personas. And in that sense, it's not necessarily always a statistically large enough size, because even if I have a 30-member team selling to the US, it is actually 10 individual teams selling to different segments in the US, either size or geography or industry.
Correct. So what we are trying, and this is still a kind of work in process, is we see this happening in shared service centers and global captive centers a lot, right? So shared service centers have 5-member HR teams, for example. They process all the HR, payroll, employee leave, encashment, and all of those things. There will be 5 people. So it's very hard. So there will be somebody who's doing accounts payable, somebody who's doing accounts receivable. So they'll have a 150-member team, but there will be 5-member, 8-member, 10-member teams that are doing different kinds of KPIs. So what we are trying is to say that we will deploy this not on the individual agents that are processing, but on the team leads, because at that level, everybody is uniform. The team lead has measurements like how many productive hours did he or she deliver, how many employee attritions did she or she cover or cut down, how many hours of L&D were spent. So there are a set of standard project management or operations management KPIs that work on the team leads. Now, you may not have 150 team leads, you may have 30, 40 team leads, but you get uniformity of KPIs. So it's a trade-off now, right? So do you want more licenses or do you want to create better impact? So we are just working on this for captive centers and shared centers, so shared service centers. So it's a similar problem to what you're saying, right? So you're selling to different customers, small teams, but the team lead is likely to have kind of comparable KPIs, in which case it becomes an implementation for the team lead.
Super helpful. Thank you. I'll connect with you again.
Sure.
So, anything else? Anyone wants to ask any question or have some comments or something like that?
Shiva, have you had your products rolled out? Because I was just thinking, there was this classmate of mine who's CIO at the Ask Investment Managers Limited, who kind of have a portfolio of their own, and they have all of these HNIs who invest through them, and they have PMS services. So have you kind of had your product deployed at such firms as well?
No, we have not had any wealth management deployments at the moment, Manish.
Okay. That's because I was wondering, because the kind of numbers that you're talking about, these guys should be able to provide that, because they have their offices in multiple locations as well.
Yeah. So as typically what I don't know, I'm not a very good financial management expert, but wealth management and wealth management related services is more relationship based. You need to spend a lot of time, and it's each client reacts differently to your offerings. Whereas if you want to sell a packet of shampoo, it's the same thing, right? You go there, chahiye kya karke, you just make an order and sell. So our product doesn't fit well in a relationship management. That's why I said, when you have to sell an IT equipment of $1 million or more, you cannot rely on a transactional cookie cutter sales approach. So our product works really well when you have the same thing to do like 50 times in the month, as opposed to once in 3 months, right? If you have one sale in 3 months, then it may not be the right product, because things are different and behaviors are much more nuanced.
So we are coming to the end of the program. So Shiva, you want to give some closing remark, and then we can.
No, yeah, I mean it's IMC never ceases to amaze me, right? I mean, just look at the diversity of people that we have here. Incredible, right? So I always feel proud when I interact with people from the alma mater, and it's such a nice feeling to meet and talk to all of you. And I mean, my contacts are with ASO. If any of you need any further discussion, I'd be happy to have a one-on-one, a more detailed one-on-one, a product walkthrough if any of you want to look at it. And even if it is just for academic purposes, just want to look at it, how does this product work? What does it do? And what are the concepts behind it? I'm happy walking you through it.
I was wondering, Shiva, for example, I'm supposed to be taking a module on motivation, these 80 odd people that I have, and therefore if this is how we can kind of direct their attention somewhere, if I could invite you once to kind of have a session for them, I'll connect. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shiva. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you also for putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.